From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. And by the time you're seeing this, you probably have already eaten your big Thanksgiving dinner, so a happy Thanksgiving Day to you and yours from all of us here at Chicago Newsroom. We're so glad you're spending a little bit of your Thanksgiving weekend with us, and welcome to the show. I'm going to take a little personal prerogative on this Thanksgiving Day, this Thanksgiving weekend, to do a little thanking of myself. It was about 7 years ago that Barbara Popovic and the crowd here at Can TV called me up and said, hey, we're thinking about creating some kind of like a weekly, maybe a news discussion, information kind of show, and we're wondering if you'd like to come on board and help us develop that show. And of course I said yes. And it's been all these years, and we've done 15, 20 shows, something like that. And it's just been a phenomenal time, and I'm just completely beside myself with gratitude for everything that Can TV has done for me personally. And I think, together we've all kind of created a little something very cool here. I don't get a chance to brag about it very often, but this is the perfect day to do it. The crew here is incredible. I just love coming in and working every week with all the people who you don't get to see, but they're all around the place. If you look around, you see all these cameras, and you see all the people working the cameras, and it is just absolutely wonderful here. But the really great news is that there's this brand new facility, and the woman who has really shepherded all of this together is our only guest today, Barbara Popovic. I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks for walking down the hall.
This is so fun. Now, do I get to do my little bit of
You
thanks?
get to do anything you want, but
right.
but I just want to say that it's just really been a pleasure, and this place that you guys have built here is phenomenal.
Thank you, and I can't wait to dig in on that. But let me say, in terms of gratitude, that first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Greg Bozell, who,
Yes.
our former employee, who had great vision and certainly
Yes, he sure
recognized
did.
what you could bring to this, Ken. But more importantly, over these 7 years that you have given so unselfishly of your time and talents to bring to the audience these substantive and consistent conversations with journalists and community leaders from all over the Chicago area. So we're very excited to have Chicago Newsroom here and feel like, when we think about public access and all that it can do, this fills a gap that needed to be filled. And it's news, it's newsworthy, but it's also very community. So I just want to thank you and express gratitude to you.
It's been very interesting for me because a lot of people who've been on the show, and some of them, are pretty high up there type people. When they finish the show, they say, wow, it was so refreshing to have like a half an hour or 40, 45 minutes to talk about this and not be constantly being told, all right, that's all the time we have.
Right.
And that is what, look, we both go back a long way, and that was the whole dream of access television, right?
Exactly. Dig in a little deeper.
To be an alternative.
Yep. Look more broadly, expand the diversity of issues and thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I think that in many ways at this station, you see programming you will never see on television elsewhere.
Yeah. I thought it would be really kind of fun to have you go back in time a little bit, because you go back essentially to the beginning of, you really do go back to the beginning of the concept of access television. And we forget about that. We forget about where it came from and the fight for it in Chicago. It was, I remember those days in the city council when that whole thing was being put together.
And that predated me a little bit.
It did.
I was out in the city of Wheaton at the time doing this kind of work. Yeah. But, it is really interesting that public access to me and its value and its need has never changed. Mm-hmm. It hasn't aged. It hasn't become sort of a dinosaur in this media landscape. It's crucial, it's refreshing, it's something that doesn't exist in media elsewhere. But way back when public access was seen by the FCC as a way to sort of balance, to make sure there was localism and diversity in media. It wasn't fully supported in law. There wasn't sort of a perfect formula for making sure it was sustainable. But it's a scrappy little movement. And where it has survived, like in Chicago, which is a pretty scrappy town, it's phenomenal.
It's really a child of cable, right?
Yes.
I mean, it began with the dawn of the cable age.
Right. Well, the principle is that cable companies use your land and mine when they build their systems. So they got to pay something back. Now, there were cities that didn't have the vision of Chicago, didn't look around the nation, didn't have the incredible activist community pushing for community involvement. And they just said, great, a little bit more money for our jails or our potholes. Right. Always needed, right? But in Chicago, they took some time. They were a little bit late coming to the table on this within about a decade. So it was around early 80s when they kind of got those first franchise agreements. And there was a piece in there for public access that could just as well not have been there. But there was this convergence of forces, the community push, the city councils with some enlightened self-interest going on there, and the time that they were able to look around the nation and say, this is what we need to do in Chicago. We're not going to follow these cities that haven't taken full advantage of what cable can bring. So I'm particularly proud that in this city, they named CAN TV. That CAN TV has always existed in the law, in the city ordinance. This was not a question mark.
Which is Chicago Access Network, by the way.
Yes, yeah, Chicago Access Network Television. And that all these years, we've certainly had our battles, but we have landed on our feet. So, it's been a really good run and an important one, because I don't sit here in the digital age and say, we've done well and it's really not needed anymore. Actually, the opposite is true.
Well, that's one of the real reasons that I wanted to talk to you today, because there is this feeling, and I think I don't really know, I don't follow the industry that closely, but I mean, my sense of it is that a lot of the smaller access places have pretty much closed down or just kind of become irrelevant, because it's like you can make a TV show with one of these, right? You can make a full-length movie with one of these. So why would you need to go to some place to do this? Well, like everything else, you have to battle back against that impulse, because it's about storytelling, really, isn't it? It's about telling your own story, and you need a little bit more sometimes than just being able to like punch the button and talk into your an animated selfie.
Let me use the example of the Community Partners crew that are shooting this show right now. When they're not in here working with you, Ken, to do Chicago Newsroom, they're putting on a backpack that takes them out in the community to be in the middle of an event covering something live. They're out at an event recording something that will then go on multiple platforms, cable and online. And these are events that would not be being covered. And if they were, it'd be the 30-second headline. Right. Thankfully, many times, you've got a bunch of cameras out there. Who stays? CAN TV stays. CAN TV tells that whole story. So we really let that information flow through our channels, but it doesn't stop there. Then it goes online. People can access it. I'll just do our little PSA, but it's CAN TV, CANTV.org. We have a Watch Now page where people can go see these shows, see other coverage. So that's a part of what we do, but we also open the doors to people who would not be going out and buying their own editing stuff for home or spending a lot of time making videos. I think it's awesome that you have early adopters and people who have the time and interest in making video. It's just not everybody. It may not be the domestic violence group.
Right,
Most likely isn't the health group that's overwhelmed with clients, and yet those are stories that need to be told too. So we've developed some really innovative services, like a live call-in service where people can call in and speak to doctors and nurses and speak to health officials and speak to victims of domestic violence. And there's this wonderful synergy between the ability to actually pick up a phone, call, talk to someone you would otherwise not be connecting with.
Yeah.
So
I got to tell you that one of the things that's so exciting about this is the fact that I get the sense that CAN-TV hasn't lost or forgotten its roots as a sort of a cable television channel, but at the same time, it's really rapidly and aggressively becoming this platform that's online, that's in the air, wireless, and that it's more than anything, it's as you said, it's bringing people in who don't have the skills to tell the story themselves and may not even be all that interested in learning the skills to do it, but you know, they'll come and they'll find a community. So it's this whole, in order to keep a place like this growing and remaining relevant, it has to become, along with the times, a lot of things other than what it once was.
right.
And that's what's cool about this when you look around this place and you see it.
Yeah, so there's a really strong educational component to what we do. In addition to facilitating the work of the nonprofits, I just talked about one easy way we do that. You know, we have 4 different courses that are taught to several hundred people a year. And I think it's a little bit elitist to assume that people are just going to figure all this out by themselves. We've found over time we haven't seen a lessening of interest. We haven't necessarily seen that people go, I can do all that myself now. In fact, it was very interesting that we've had groups gravitate towards us who could not create the content elsewhere. Now, that's not to say they couldn't do it on their video phone, but working with us, they're on multiple platforms, a little bit about what you're talking about. But they also get one-on-one attention from our training staff. We are so focused on mission here. Our mission is to help people get their speech out there. Bottom line, I'm not judging the speech. Nobody here is going to judge that speech. It's how can we facilitate this person's desire to be a speaker in this town, on these channels and elsewhere. And that's really where you get this amazing array and diversity of all these different kinds of programs, you know.
Yes, it is.
Which
it's
are
amazing.
all kinds.
Yeah, but and again, it's something that almost seems sort of quaint in this kind of crazy, fast-paced world we're in. This idea that no, here you can just say what you want to say. It's sort of Bughouse Square, but it's way more sophisticated.
Well, and let me say though, Ken, we're old-fashioned in this wonderful way. If somebody calls CAN-TV, a person picks up the phone. How refreshing is that? That person is going to get the caller to where they need to go. We're really about facilitating experience from start to finish, where people are able to achieve what they come here to achieve. I'm okay with old-fashioned when it comes to that, because I and you and just about everybody listening to this show have been stuck in a labyrinth of voicemails and being bumped from person to person and feeling more and more marginalized when we just need to get a simple question answered. So I'm really glad we're that way.
So let's talk a little bit about this facility. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. The old place over on Green Street, I think it's such, I tell the story all the time. I think it's so fascinating that for so many years, CAN-TV was just about the only tenant in that building, right?
Well, no,
there were not very many. It was a largely empty building. And then all of a sudden the big boom happens, and all of a sudden it's like everywhere you go there's like, you know, there's millennials running around because they're developing new software or something. I don't know exactly what everybody was doing. But, you know, the place became desirable all of a sudden.
Right? So what Ken's trying to say diplomatically is we didn't have a choice. We had to move, right? I mean, Google comes in up the block, bye-bye CAN-TV, which ended up being this incredible blessing in disguise.
It did because of the way you reacted to it, but it could have been pretty disastrous.
Well, let me say that several things came together. An active board that had creative ideas like, hey, John Cook. Let's look in the medical district. There's land there, and there's synergy there with the goals of the medical district, with STEM education, which we do here with our groups, and so on. Science, technology was a nice match. So that was very good. I have to say this right now because I'm thinking about it. 50 free parking spots, which you could not get anywhere in the city. I tell you, I've looked. I have looked over the last decade at 70 to 100 locations for this.
Have you really? Wow.
I have, because we recognize that CAN-TV is unusual. We don't just have to move desks. We've got this complicated facility. And in addition to moving all this equipment, we are hardwired to 4 cable companies, which means that to keep our programming on the air, if we move, we've got to do that. So I want to credit Comcast, that took the lead on that, Wide Up and West, RCN, AT&T. They got us hooked up in time not to miss a day of programming when we moved. That was very significant.
Yeah, it was a very stunning little technical ballet to make that happen.
And this is a land lease, Ken. We can't be kicked out per se. As long as we're able to meet the financial obligations, this is our home now.
Yeah.
And to have a permanent home says something about the permanence of public access too.
It does, and that's what is so fascinating about this to me is that as I said, I don't want to make a bigger deal of it than it is, but for a lot of public access, it's kind of sunsetting. But this is partly we live in a very vibrant city where there's a kind of a demand for it. Right. So if we couldn't make it happen here, it's not going to happen anywhere. But at this time when there are all these challenges, to be able to pull something like this off, it's just really cool. Yeah. And we are sitting in a studio here that is, I think it's safe to say it's as good as any video production studio in the city. It's completely and totally up to date. Everything is digital, LED lighting. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility. Yeah. And the thing that's really weird about it is that you pretty much got it out of the ground in about a year.
Even less.
Yeah, I just don't understand that. It was a little over a year ago, this was a weed patch.
Yeah, so back to the studio for a minute. So we've got 4 cameras here aiming at us.
Yeah.
2 in the sky on the ceiling.
Right.
All digital workflow, wireless microphones, green screens, so we could have, Berlin or something else behind us right now if we chose to. We did have an open house to kind of celebrate together the opening of this facility, and they kept the green screen up and people loved it. Yeah. They got up on the stage. We did a lot of planning, and I will credit CAN-TV's conservatism fiscally at having really, I think, been good stewards of the cable monies that came through these agreements over the years to be able to make this move. A lot of times people say, you shouldn't build up a reserve. Well, we would be homeless right now if we had not planned that way. And a lot of planning went on with our technology department in terms of buying equipment for years that could be transported over here, so we didn't have to start with empty space.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that. We do have another small live call-in studio here, which is awesome.
Yeah, tell us about that, because again, for years it was just kind of like a small closet down in the basement.
We converted an office. Yeah. That is, we call it our hotline studio, but we have about 30 live half-hour shows per week. Pretty amazing. These are shows with housing experts, domestic violence groups, health groups, jobs groups. I listened to a show this week with someone talking about credit, how you should clean up your credit. The calls were just rolling in. There is need. And you can be sitting at home and you just got denied a loan and you're confused about what you need to do. And here's this guy on your Channel 19 or Channel 21 telling you how to clean up your credit, where you can go. What a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
So they're working with a wide variety of groups, and let me mention another service that they administer is a simple bulletin board, interactive bulletin board channel created through CAN TV, unique in the country, that logs hundreds of phone calls a day, similarly to messages about jobs and training and things like that. Now, people may say, wow, I mean, with the internet, why are people still calling this channel? Because people are calling the channel. I mean, I haven't seen the recent numbers, but 30% of the populace was not online at home not too long ago. So we've got to think smart in this society. If we're really committed to not leaving people behind, then you need to look at this nuanced media landscape and say, how can we do plus and, not either or? Not we're now moving into 4K technology and beyond, so let's just scrap all the rest of that stuff. But how can we really carve out a space to be sure that the kind of people we work with here are brought along? I used to joke, I date myself, if it was carrier pigeon, I wouldn't care. Just make sure the people are there, you know, whatever it is. You know?
So when we bring people into the studio here, the number one question that we get when they walk in and go, oh my God, the second question is, where did this money come from?
Okay. Well, when I talked a little bit earlier about how unique the public access model is, cable companies and video providers use our land. That is what made the difference in being able to have franchise agreements that did have a set aside of channels and funding. I'll say in Chicago, it's a long and interesting history, which would put your audience to sleep in about 5 minutes. But, so we won't go through all that. However, there has been cooperation on the part of the cable industry. They, I believe, see the uniqueness of what CAN TV offers. And we have certainly had periods of time when there was an attempt maybe to take a channel back, where people have risen up and said, no, we want that service. So I think that a number of things came together to make sure that the funding continues to flow. Is it absolutely secure forever? Comes up again in the next legislative session downstate for a bill that renews about every 2 years. Is public access vulnerable? Certainly could be. So why do we have to remain vigilant? What is it we can't afford to lose about what a place like CAN TV offers? I can tell you there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who can answer that question pretty profoundly.
Well, all you had to do was be here for the open house a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And, I mean, I have to say, even I was shocked by how many people were here. The place was just crammed with people, and they were here to say hi and to say thank you, and that's a very cool thing. So the big news, though, is that you're not going to be doing this much longer.
That's right.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I mean, I'm happy for you. But.
Yes, I have announced that I'm retiring at the end of 2016, and it will be almost my 30th year.
It is the end of 2016 already. It's only a couple of weeks away.
I know. When you think about December kind of flies by, doesn't it? So obviously my commitment to public access, what it stands for, is rock solid. So, and I'm not falling off the planet. But it's the right time, I think, for the organization with fresh energy to take this mission forward. And I'm actually pretty excited about that. I've been around a long time. I've really, really felt that this was an extraordinary career opportunity in terms of working directly with people, being able to stand firm on mission. CAN TV dwells in a very political city. And,
yes, everything's politics here,
But we're not a quid pro quo kind of place. We're a place that says mission first. And somehow we've survived. So there is enough goodwill and good spirit. Our political leaders get this. They see that their constituents have no other place to go. So I really think that that's been a part of our survival, that we do what we need to do, we do it well, and people recognize that.
It has indeed, and I think it needs to be said at this point that it's one of the unique skills that you brought to this seat, because I've watched it over the years and I've seen how close it's come, and I've seen the high wire act that you've had to do.
To disaster, you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, to like Ennsville, yeah. And it's like, it's a never-ending job. It's like every couple of years you have to start all over again and teach everybody of the value of it, and go and fight the good fight, and then you win, and and you get enough time to catch your breath, and then it's time to start again. So I can see how this would be a good point to say, well, we'll let somebody else take that fight. But it is a very sensitive and critical battle that I mean, the way the thing is structured, it just always has to be, you have to always be in fighting mode.
Yeah, so I've come to realize after years of this and seeing the evolving struggle pick up somewhat, that the fight for public space on media will never end.
Yeah.
That those of us who believe in it need to believe in it strongly enough to stand firm for it.
Yeah.
That when we do that, when we tell those critical stories, I mean, the letters that we get, Ken, are unbelievable, from nonprofits who are recruiting people into health programs, who are reaching people they never reached before. That's very convincing to me. So I think gathering all of that and recognizing that we will always be vulnerable, it's just, we're this odd duck. We're inclusive. Everyone is welcome.
It is an odd duck, and it's been a real pleasure to have been here all this time. And I just got to say that more than at any time in its history, CAN TV is actually poised to be able to survive in all different sorts of ways because of this multi-platformic kind of thing, and the fact that you're going to be training up people. And the one quick thing, we're running out of time quickly here, but I know I was saying to somebody at the open house, it's like, you know, I don't mean to put down any of our great academic institutions in Chicago, but you can spend $20,000 to go and learn how to use a digital studio. You can come here and sign up and get it for nothing, and you'll be flying. You know, look at that console in there. You're not going to find anything much better than that. It's very sophisticated. It takes a lot of training, but you can be somebody just walks in the door and learns this. And that's worth a lot.
And let me mention quickly that a group that comes in here are Special Olympics athletes who we have trained, who come in, they operate the equipment, they tell their own story, and their most recent program was talking about their 50th anniversary coming up. This wasn't a little profile done by news media the week of. This is the people speaking
telling
themselves.
their own story. And that, you know, that's
right.
That's the way to end this. That's the way to end this discussion. Telling their own story.
Right.
Let's print that on hats and telling my own story.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for inviting me to be part of it.
Oh, it's been great for us,
All right.
Ken.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving week. We'll see you next week with another program here on Chicago Newsroom. Remember, you can always see all of our shows right here by going to this address, and we hope you will. And sincerely, happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody else. See you next week. Bye-bye.